It's time to start your morning by taking 5. Here's your host, Matt McMaster.
You're listening to Take 5, a quick 5-minute take on the biggest things happening in Nebraska sports. I'm your host, Matt McMaster, and once again, we are talking about Nebraska basketball. Yesterday was kind of the end. Nebraska basketball will play another game in the postseason, whether it be in the NIT or the Crown Tournament, but essentially the season is done. Nebraska suffers their last Big Ten defeat of the year by a score of 83-68 at the hands of the Iowa Hawkeyes. They finish the regular season with a 17-14 record, and it was just one of those games where they blitzed Bryce Williams, and they told everybody else, all right, if you're going to win this game, if you're going to the Big Ten tournament, if you're going to keep yourself in the NCAA tournament conversation, you got to do it with everybody else. And Nebraska couldn't do it. Connor Essegian went 0 for 11 from the field. Sam Hoiberg, I thought, played a really good defensive game, but offensively 3-9 from the floor. Juwan Gary had a really, really good game, 24 points, 7-15 from the field, but it just wasn't enough. Wasn't enough to beat the Hawkeyes, and the defense was fine, but Iowa definitely was finding more shots, and that's kind of what they do. They're an offensive style team. They're going to try and beat you 85-80, 90-85, whatever it may be. And Nebraska just couldn't keep up. And once again, the depth, or lack of depth, rather, kind of showed in this one. And now we are in the 6th year of Fred Hoiberg. Nebraska misses the tournament in the 6th year, the Big Ten tournament, not just the NCAA tournament, the Big Ten tournament in the 6th year of Fred Hoiberg. And, while there were some really, really high moments of the year, Illinois, Oregon, Creighton, winning the Diamond Head Classic against a pretty good Oregon State team, there were good moments this year, and I think that is kind of what stings the most. At points, you thought, man, this team is good. This team could not only just make the tournament, maybe even make a run in the tournament, and the lows were low. And this 5-game losing streak to end the year was low, and a 6-game losing streak in the middle of the year was low. And it just, at the end of the day, it came down to poor roster construction, a lack of talent, and just not being locked in at some points. And maybe you can get away with not being locked in when you're playing Stony Brook or, lesser teams in the beginning of the year. But once you get into the Big Ten conference play, there's no days off. You cannot not show up one day. And too many times this team just didn't. And so now we sit here once again with Nebraska on the outside looking into the postseason. And we have to start asking questions about how is this team going to get to the point where they are a sustainable basketball program, where they are consistently competing with the top of the Big Ten. Is Fred Hoiberg that guy? I think that he will probably end up getting another year to be the coach of this team. I think that his buyout is way too high, and the university just has a lot of things that they plan on paying for in the next couple of years, and new expenses and whatnot. And so I think that that'll be a factor. And you also have to look at it from the perspective, a year ago, a year ago, they made the tournament. And a year ago, he was Big Ten Coach of the Year. And that holds weight. That is something. And do I have concerns, major concerns, over the sustainability of how Fred Hoiberg builds his program, how he builds his team through the transfer portal? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is not a good look that you made the NCAA tournament and then 1 year later had to go back in the portal and get all these guys and try and make your roster that way, and then you end up not even making the Big Ten conference tournament. I mean, that is a red flag. And I just think, you can have other, and we've had these conversations about how much does the athletic department want to invest into basketball? How much do they care? What are the expectations? Is Fred Hoiberg meeting those expectations? Are those expectations wildly too low? It's a whole bag of worms. I mean, it's Pandora's box of just questions and arguments you can make for or against Fred Hoiberg. But the fact is that he's 37-82 in Big Ten conference play. That's not good enough. And his overall record, isn't that much worse from that as well. And so I think because of finances and because of the fact that last year was so good, maybe, they will say, hey, you're warranted, or you're given another year. You've done enough to earn another year of being the head coach of Nebraska basketball. But in my opinion, Fred Hoiberg for sure, without a doubt, after yesterday's loss and just how the entirety of this season went from high to low, is absolutely 100% on the hot seat. And next season is going to be massive for him, and not only just getting the team back to where he wants them to be, but also reproving that, hey, this transfer portal model is a model of sustained success. This season proved that, I wouldn't say proved, but this season it added a layer to an argument that last year might have just been lightning in the bottle. It added that potential outcome that last year was just special, and you really can't build a roster and flip over a roster year in and year out this way with Fred Hoiberg as your coach. The results of this year added to that belief. Next year, Fred Hoiberg has to win. They have to get to the NCAA tournament, and he has to prove that year in and year out they can build a winning program through the portal. That's the number one thing he's got to prove, and they got a lot of work to do. They got a lot of guys that they're going to miss out on or not going to have next year that was on the team this year. It's going to be a very, very different roster next year, and it's going to be very interesting to see what the investment is in terms of dollars is on the roster and what type of guys they go out and get. I've been Matt McMaster, and that's been Take 5.